going to have a panel discussion based on careers. And this one is focused on our fellow residents that served as nurses. And we're going to have them introduce themselves in a minute, but I would like for you to try and identify who's who. So starting up on the left corner, upper left, who is this? Judy. That's Judy. Number 2? Helen. That's Helen. Number 3? Sandy. Lower left? And lower right. A very distinguished board, huh? So, Judy, we're going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background and coming up to your career, where you came from and what it was about.
Okay, well, that could be a long story, but I'm going to make it short. I just always wanted to be a nurse when I grew up, and I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I went to St. Vincent's School of Nursing, which was a 3-year program at that time. I graduated in '63. And it was, it was a good fit for me. I just always wanted to be a nurse, and I became a nurse, and so there. I don't know what else to say.
Judy, tell about your grandmother's role.
Oh, well, my grandmother was a kind of an acting midwife in her neighborhood, and I should say midwife/nurse, but she wasn't trained. But if somebody was having a baby and the doctor didn't make it, she went and helped deliver that baby. Even if the doctor made it, sometimes she delivered the baby. She just kind of really influenced me a lot. She was just kind of a nursey type person, so made me kind of want to do that. And so that's how I became a nurse.
You couldn't tell the rest of it?
No, we'll just introduce
Helen?
ourselves first.
No, go ahead.
Do you want me to say more? Or
I don't want you to get started on your career. We're going to come back to that.
okay.
Okay. I'm Helen, and I was born in Minneapolis at Fairview downtown, and I've lived in southern Minnesota most of my life. I finished high school in Frost. If anybody knows where that is, down by Blue Earth, about 4 miles north of the Iowa border. And I finished Frost and went to St. Olaf, and I had always planned to go to St. Olaf. I never really knew what I wanted to do, though. And it so happened that the St. Olaf program had just started a 5-year nursing program a year or two before. And so when I decided to go to St. Olaf, I decided, well, I might try the 4-year program, which they came up with, and see if I like it, and if it likes me, and if I don't, I'll do something else. And I just never got out.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Luty, and I graduated from Waukesha Memorial or Waukesha High School in 1960, and I always wanted to be a nurse. There weren't many opportunities for other people to choose a category except a secretary, a teacher, or as a nurse. Thank you.
I can identify with that, Sandy. I didn't want to be a teacher or a secretary, so I went into nursing, but it was what I always wanted to do. Unlike Judy's story with her encouragement of her grandma. When I told my mom I was going to go to nursing school, she said, "I think that's a terrible idea. You really shouldn't do that." But once I got going, she did support me. I went to El Camino College in Redondo Beach, California, and graduated in 1969.
Marilyn, what did your mother have against nursing?
She had an intense fear of anything medical or hospitals or anything like that.
Well, thinking about that, I think I could understand if she was that afraid. Yeah, understandable. Oh, well, my name is Esther Tatley. My picture's on the wall, of course, and happens to be my wedding picture because I didn't find anything else, and I don't know what else to say about it. But we had a great time at the wedding. My father and my husband-to-be's father were both Lutheran pastors. So there, I mean, just to put it out there. What the heck? So, 100% Norwegian, says my daughter, because she's here and because she knows very well about these Lutheran pastors, etc. Yeah. Yeah, it's been great. I'm getting distracted with this, seeing myself on the screen. That's a whole different story, right? Wouldn't you say? Oh my gosh. In addition to that, I happen to be the daughter of a man, a pastor, a Lutheran pastor, who had gone to St. Olaf College. Well, what do you do? Then I, of course, thought that must be what I should do. And so, and he supported that, of course, and so forth and so on. And so that's what I did do. By then, these St. Olaf folk had put together a full board nursing program, meaning that one could go to college for 4 years and learn everything there was to learn about nursing, as well as everything else we needed to learn about, which was a lot of religion, etc. So it was a great time. It was fun and it was delightful. So that's my main background in terms of nursing. I've also have another degree or two, but we can go there another day or another time. Doesn't matter. So I'll pass this back to Marilyn. And then you take it from here again,
Judy.
right?
We're going back to Judy. What's my turn again? Okay, my nursing career consisted of staying in the hospital where I went to school and becoming different positions in that hospital. And I always said that because I was young and I could run up and downstairs like crazy, it was a 4-level hospital, and I not bragging, but it's a reason why I did this. The nuns decided I would be the evening supervisor of the hospital. So 22 years old, and I'm supervising a hospital, 350 patients, and exhausted most of the time. So that kind of goes along with nursing, because you are exhausted most of the time. So I did that for a while, and then when my daughter was born, I decided to change hospitals, and I went to work at a community hospital in intensive care, and that was a great experience. So I worked in various positions, but also a lot of it had to be part-time because I had a husband that managed a sales force, and he wanted me to be available. You go on trips with us, you go to dinners, and yeah. So a lot of it was part-time for a long time. And then when we moved to Minnesota, I took some time off to raise my kids, and then I went back to school part-time, or to work part-time. And I worked at Stillwater Hospital for a while, which was very interesting because it was a small hospital, but connected with all the big hospitals in the Twin Cities, and close enough that we could get information and had doctors that came in and all that. So it was a very good hospital and good experience. And I learned a lot being in a small hospital. I had a circle that there was pediatrics over here and there were heart patients over here. So you had to change gears quite a few times during the day. Then I discovered long-term care, and that really was my passion. I think, again, because of my grandma, I loved old people, and I loved the stories, and that's another reason why I like doing this. And I love taking care of them because very often they don't tell you they're sick. And you have to figure it out. And there was a lot of good diagnoses and that going on. So that was kind of fun, and meeting their families. I worked as an MDS nurse in Florida. And an MDS is the required documentation for everyone who lives in the long-term care facility. Now that doesn't include this, it includes nursing homes. And the questions they ask, sometimes I really and truly, this is a government form, why do they want to know that? But that was an interesting thing because I got to have meetings with families, and we talk about problems they might be having and try to solve those problems. And so it was very challenging in that way. I went to my 50th reunion with all the nurses that possibly could come that were in my class. And we stayed close throughout all the years. In fact, I just talked to a couple of them over the phone this week. And that's another perk that I think we had. We had a small class and we were very close. Every one of us were friends. And some did some amazing things, and a big number of them got their degrees in nursing, which I did also. When my daughter attended St. Kate's, I participated in the St. Kate's parent program, where you could take 3 classes free every semester. That was really cool. We went to the same college. So I think that's about it. I would not encourage anyone to go into nursing today. It's so different. But I do have a granddaughter that's studying speech therapy, and it's so interesting to talk to her. We really share a lot of information, and I'm glad she's doing what she's doing. So that's about it for me, and I'll pass it on to Helen, and you can hear about her story.
Okay. I want to go back to my
Closer, Helen.
I want to go back to my years at St. Olaf and just sort of show you how different things are lately. I was called into the dean's office during my senior year because I was engaged, and my fiance would come down to see me once in a while. And I got called into the dean's office because I was walking down strolling around the yard, holding hands with this fellow.
Such a bad person.
Okay, so anyway, as a student, there were 36 of us in my nursing class, and of course we were part of the whole student body at St. Olaf during our first year and during our senior year. And then the sophomore and junior years, we spent, and the summers in between, and the summer after we graduated, we spent at Fairview Downtown or affiliating hospitals to get various experiences that we needed. And we would have class, and then we would go work for a couple hours. And then we would have class, and then we would work for a couple hours. So on the first day that we were on one of the stations in the hospital, let's see, I have to tell you first of all, on the nursing stations, you probably, I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but there's always a clean room and a dirty room. For all the clean stuff goes in the, comes from the, no, what am I trying to say? The laundry and the clean stuff comes out of that clean room. Okay, and the dirty room is where we would bring the empty the bedpans and take care of anything that was really dirty. Well, anyway, I was walking down the hall and I passed the dirty room. This is our first day on duty. We had been assigned our first patients, and in this dirty room was a roommate of mine who had a bedpan sitting in front of her on the hopper. And she had this terrible face on her, and she was wringing out the urine. She was wringing out the urine because her nurse that was in charge of her patient had told her that this patient, it was very important that she measure all of the things that she was drinking, all of the fluids, and make sure that you measure accurately all of the output that came. And so she was keeping it all as accurate as she possibly could. That's before we knew that we could think too. Didn't have to follow directions, just to the T. Anyway, so those are some of the things that happened. Let's see, later on, at Fairview, let's see, let me skip through that. When we finished our training, our education, and had graduated, I decided that I would apply for a nursing job at Fairview since I knew Fairview. And this was in the early 50s, well, late 50s, and rehabilitation was a concept that was just taking on in the cities. And I remember the sidewalks were getting their corners, flattened out so that people from wheelchairs could get down easily, and the revolving doors were getting made wider, and it was sort of an exciting time. But Fairview was building a new rehab unit that would, on first floor, have physical therapy and occupational therapy. On the second floor was our rehabilitation nursing unit, and I would be helping to set up that rehabilitation unit. So we worked with the occupational therapists and the physical therapists to learn what we had to know in order to work with the patients, and we kept learning all the time because different patients brought in different kinds of information for us. And it was fascinating, a time for me to be working there. We got to train in the aides and the orderlies that would be working too. And I think that set the stage for some later work that I did, but I learned a lot of things from that I am using now. If you've got two good legs, but one is weaker than the other, the stronger leg always has to do the work. So when you're going up steps, the stronger leg goes first, and the weaker leg follows. When you're going down steps, the weaker leg goes first, and the stronger leg follows. If you've got shoulders that are sore, if there's one that's sore or weaker than the other one, that one goes into the shirt first and comes out last. So all sorts of things that we learned have been very useful to me now. Let's see. So I worked on that rehab unit for about 10 years and then taught at the School of Nursing. They had a 3-year school at Fairview, and we realized that now that we had new rehab patients with amputees, with strokes, with arthritis, multiple sclerosis, those kinds of disability spawning illnesses, the students that we were getting and the nurses that we were getting didn't know how the rehab techniques went until they learned from us. Can you hear me? Can you raise your hand back there too to help me remember? Okay, thank you. So, where was I? I was supposed to teach rehab techniques to the students in their first year at Fairview as nursing students. When the School of Nursing closed at Fairview, I got a job with Sister Kenny Institute, and my job was to answer phone calls from hospitals and nursing homes outstate in Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, North and South Dakota, because they needed to learn how to do these rehab techniques too. How to transfer from a person that had a stroke and could not use one leg, from how to teach them to transfer from a wheelchair to the bed, for example, or how to do to get to the bathroom. There were just many things that had to be taught to the patients, and the nurses had to do that. When Sister Kenny, I have to tell you this one thing. Maybe you don't know, maybe you do know. Sister Kenny was not a Catholic. Sister was the name given to the, I have it written down here someplace, Australian nurses when they were in the Army. So that's where the sister comes from. Yeah. So anyway, they were carrying on the rehab from leftover polio. So that was interesting. Then Sister Kenny Institute merged with Abbott Northwestern, and I kept doing the same kind of thing, but also we started doing more workshops for broader, larger hospitals, and we brought in other rehab, like vocational rehab, and brought in people that needed to know more about all of the various kinds of rehab to listen to the experts that were there at Sister Kenny in Abbott Northwestern. And when Abbott Northwestern had to do a lot of layoffs, I was one of the layoffs and got a job at the University of Minnesota and carried on doing teaching of rehab techniques in the 5-state area where the hospital had clinics and nursing and connections with nursing homes and rehab. So I've been in rehab all my life and have really loved it and like it for myself now, and remind doctors that sometimes occupational physical therapists can do for you what the doctors can't with their pills and stuff. Sandy.
Thank you. Speaking of Fairview, Hospital, I was welcomed to Fairview Nunnery, which is Fairview School of Nursing in Minneapolis. The sign on the door said, on the elevator said, "Welcome to Fairview Nunnery," which was a Missouri Synod Lutheran hospital, and they did not believe in alcohol, no smoking. They frowned on males, and I was not of that faith. Anyway, I was thinking that the funniest thing that happened in training, I gave a bed bath to a female and cried all the way back to the dorm, wondering why I had chosen nursing. Anyway, I hung in there and graduated August 26, 1963, which was a day to remember. And I gave birth to my son in 1963, in September, 3 weeks after I had taken the boards to getting a nursing license. Anyway, the first job I received was in nursing at the St. Cloud Hospital. And can you guess what they paid me? $3.10 an hour, and the current pay is in Minneapolis is 47 cents an hour. I had 3 sons that I couldn't work in pediatrics, and I was I considered myself too emotional, and I had a desire to learn. So I spent working in critical care for 18 years. Taking classes to identify heart rhythms. My first job was in VA hospital in Madison, Wisconsin, and then I moved to Rockford, Illinois. I realized that on New Year's Eve, I was asked if a patient was going to make it. He was injured in a car accident, and the relative was 6 months pregnant. And my only response was, "Only God knows," a testament to my faith and to my skills. I traveled around, and I worked at Stanford Medical Center, and I stared a hole in a particular patient that had received a heart transplant. I also moved to Chippewa Falls, and I rode in an ambulance with a gunshot wound in Eau Claire. And I moved to La Crosse, and I worked in the coronary care unit. I was always in charge, and that made life stressful. The diagnosis were cardiovascular shock, septic shock, malfunction of pacemakers, heart block, and cardiac arrest. I worked with ventilators, managed drips that either increase the blood pressure or decrease the blood pressure, and I worked with nitro drips that prevented the spread of heart disease. And I performed CPR on too many patients. I realized I was burned out after the arrest of a father who was a basketball coach in La Crosse, and I was talking to his wife, and I had no ability to faced my family life, and I was depressed and I was stressed out, and I became a nurse educator. I worked in 5 different hospitals during critical care, and I retired in cardiac rehab, which was 45 years. And I taught CPR for 26 years. Anyway.
That was great, Sandy. Well, when I graduated, of course, I went to work with nurses who were significantly older than me. And they gave me a pretty hard time. One of the things they loved to tease about was the fact that I didn't know how to not only sterilize a needle, I didn't know how to sharpen one. Well, I didn't need to, because I came on the scene when we started using disposables. Everything was disposable, so there was none of that. And they teased me unmercifully over that. So right out of school, I had to wait a little while to get my full $3, and Helen, I was up to $3.50. I had to wait because my school had forgotten to send in our transcripts to the nursing board so I could show them my scores. But I couldn't get a license until they sent in all the paperwork. So I had to work as a nurse's aide for a little while until that came through. But then as soon as it did, they said, okay, here you go, here's your assignment. You've got 17 patients. It was a real baptism by fire. But I learned so much in those first couple of years, just being there and doing. And then from there, I moved to a respiratory specialist ICU. So we had people with, serious lung disease. We didn't have transplants yet. There were no lung transplants at that time. A lot of chest tubes, COPD, drug overdoses at that time were considered primarily a respiratory issue. So went through that phase, and then we moved so many times, through my married life. I was going to say that when I was in school, our summer session was psych nursing, and we went to the VA where things, these gentlemen at that time had mostly fought in World War II. So there were some major mental health problems, very serious things, and not many drugs to help. There was very little therapy, and the drugs available were not effective. They would just turn people into zombies. It was really poor. And that was the time I got married. I took off a weekend from my mental health duties, got married, and came right back on Monday. My instructor in psych had said, and she said, you keep your eyes open, keep always looking, because you never know when someone's going to get angry, fly off the handle. And she said, if you get hit, it's your own fault. Well, when I come back after that weekend, she had been decked and was in the hospital. So then I went to work at a very, very wealthy hospital. It was in Westlake Village, and a good many of our patients were attached to not only large corporations but also to Hollywood. Lots of filmmakers, directors, producers. Not too many actors. There were a few. I did meet Dick Van Dyke. It's just he was coming out of the bathroom with his little urine specimen. But that was kind of fun. And then we moved to the country, to a very small farming town, which was all new experience for me. I knew nothing about farming communities at all. So I discovered a lot of nursing that I wasn't prepared for. And I was in the emergency room there, so of course it was farm accidents. And we had a lot of migrant workers, and they would be out in the fields, and it was almost every week we would get somebody in who had been exposed to chemicals, because the crop dusters would come over and just spray the whole field, regardless of who was in it. So what did I do then? So from there I went to a neurological ICU. We were living right off the Malibu Canyon Highway, which again was people with too much money and cars that were too fast and too much alcohol on a windy road. And we had terrible, terrible accidents there. A lot of neurological head injuries, spinal injuries, a lot of those. But that was really good work too. I think that was one of my favorite places to work, actually, because what I did mattered a lot. And that's such a good feeling to know that what you're doing makes a difference, even though it was lots of machines and tubes and IVs and everything. The only really weird experience I had there is one of those books had come out about the life after death, people having these life after death experiences. And I had spent the morning reading that, and it was just so interesting and moving. And I got to work, and there everybody's in mid-code. So, of course, I, get there and I start coding the patient. We're doing compressions and doing all the drugs. And in the book, there was this story about this person who had died, and then, the tunnel of light, looking down on the people working on them and doing CPR, and then came back. And he said, I could look down on the nurses as they were working, and I could see the back of their head, and I could see a spot on the back of the nurse's head. And so here I am, we're doing compressions, and I'm thinking, is he looking? That was really creepy. So after that, we moved again. I did some travel nursing. I didn't go a long ways because I still had young kids at that time. So, but I went to quite a number of different hospitals. Every hospital's different. There's a different story, a different staff, different procedures. But I think it was fascinating. I loved doing it. The only one that was traumatic there was, you're the grunt when you go in. And so they always give you the worst patient. And they gave me the patient in an iron lung. Now, this was long after iron lungs were not being used anymore. I had seen one way back in a corner in one of the old hospitals, just waiting to be scrapped. But there was a patient in an iron lung. I thought, oh, Lord, what am I going to do with this? And I think I just stood there looking helpless, and they said, never mind, we'll change your assignment. And yeah, so then I went to work for a triage center, and that was how I ended my career. Was doing triage, which was also fascinating. I learned so much from that. What was I going to say about that? And part of my job was being an EPIC tester, the computer program we all hate when we go to see our doctor and he never looks at us because he's looking at the computer. I was the tester for that. And, giving feedback to EPIC, what was working and wasn't working. And there was a lot that wasn't working. It has gotten much better over the years, but still, so you can blame me for part of your trauma when your doctor pays no attention to you because he's staring at the computer.
And with that, I'll end and begin again. My story is one that is very similar but yet different from each one of the others that you've heard. And it is called public health nursing. And that was my entire career once I discovered, and I discovered it by just simply being a staff nurse for the first time in my entire career, and in a little hospital. And, I thought things were just great, but I could tell that we weren't quite meeting all the needs somehow in my head. And, I obviously had gone to school at St. Olaf College, and by then, that college had developed a complete school nursing program, which was to my, of course, advantage, never having had any school nursing before, or any kind of nursing for that matter. So there I was, and needed to learn quickly and kind of, as it went. But it was a great experience, to say the least. The biggest learning for me, of course, was the fact that what I was looking at in a bed, for instance, was that which could have been prevented. And if anything sticks with you, just think prevention. It is public health. It is public health nursing. Prevention really is the name of the game for many, 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 many folk, whether they realize it or not. So there's a big part of public health nursing that includes a lot of teaching at the bedside or wherever you are there, teaching or listening to or helping in some way. But know that public health nursing is prevention, and people start talking about it, you're going to know. Absolutely, that's the whole story. So that's my story, is the whole story of prevention. And what it can do for a person is pretty fantastic. And I'm happy to be able to tell you that. I also then did get another degree. I had a bachelor's already from St. Olaf. And the other degree, the second one for me at least, was in public health. So I have a master's in public health as well, and loved every minute of that, because that was really meeting my own personal needs as well as needs of others, which I thought was pretty special. So that's my whole story. It's the whole deal. For me, it is prevention, and it is many things, but that really sums it up. And you've now heard a lot from a lot of us. Oh, my daughter pretends that I should know this. It was a big deal at the time. I founded an agency in Chisago County, which needed to be started up. I mean, it was all there, ready to go, but no one had been jumped to actually do the work of it. So it happened to be me, and I was lucky enough to be in a place where most everybody in that county area were of Swedish descent. I, of course, come along with my wonderful new hat on. It's called public health nursing. And I say, and I'm Norwegian. You can imagine how well that went over. It's one of the funnest things that I have in my history is to be a Norwegian in a Swedish community, but oh well. Eventually, we managed because we had a lot to do. We had a lot of work to do. It was in the early days of Medicare, and I was fortunate enough to be in a place where being in the early days of Medicare was really special. And everybody really thought that was a big deal. And here I was, not knowing, not a whole lot, but trying hard to surface here. And sure enough, we made it. We made it into a number of nice things that happened to us along the way, including many physicians who were very happy to have someone in homes dealing with people and the realities of life. So we did well. It was wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, then I went on to, I needed help, didn't I? Yeah. Daughter again reminds me I was the director of public health nursing in the school district of North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale at the end of my career, which was, which was a long end, but naturally. But it was a great way to sum up and finish and do do as much good as I could, even with a daughter telling me what to do. Yeah, what do you do? Yeah, she's my only child. And is a teacher, of course, like her father was, and there you have it. Yeah. With many degrees, more than I. That's how it goes. So I think I can end there. There's funny things that happen along the way to all of us, not just nurses, believe me. But boy, what a joy to think back and just remember some, if nothing more. Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity. And now do I pass this off to whom? Well then, here you are.
I've got mine. Let's give our board a big hand. Okay, I'm going to pose a few questions, and you can pick and choose which one you want to take. But things, if you haven't told a great story from your career, consider doing one, like Helen did, and don't repeat hers. When you finished your career, did you have any regrets about what you hadn't done or what you had done? And third, since all of us will be or have been in a hospital, what advice would you give us that you've seen behind the scenes perhaps or in different situations that might be helpful to us as seniors when we end up in the hospital? And the other one I would pose is, what did you feel were the important changing dynamics of your position as you were going through your career? And I'm thinking about everything from male-female interactions, nurses, doctors interactions, patient, medical staff interactions. Did these kinds of things evolve and change during your career, or were they pretty much constant? Okay, you've got something to think about now. And I don't want you answering all of these, or we'll be here all night. But who wants to be first?
I could just tell you from when I started until the time I ended, patients were nicer, doctors were worse. By the time I was at the end, it was the opposite. Patients were worse and doctors were better.
I'll be darned. Wasn't that interesting? Yeah.
And I truly agree. Doctors were made to walk on water, and nurses were empathetic, competent, and very, very detail-oriented. I can remember writing on a paper towel when my patient was going down the tubes, and in this day and age, with documentation as it is, you wouldn't be able to document that on a computer. That's for sure. Yeah.
And Judy, do you think has the doctor-nurse relationship? Do you think that has changed for the positive?
I think that has changed for the positive. I had one cardiac surgeon that gave me the riot act multiple times, and he apologized to me in a private room. And the physicians these days are not realistic. I mean, they look very young. They all look young. So, yeah, right, they are. And I've got a psychiatrist in the family and a pediatrician in the family, and they are good listeners. They are good listeners.
I think when I was a student, the doctors were definitely not in awe of us, and we were in their way. But we had several doctors that took us under their wing and had us make rounds with them, and they would teach us. So it was a teaching hospital, and I think that was the most important thing about doctors at that time. There was definitely a separation between the nurses and doctors, but as students, a lot of doctors took us under their wing and taught us things that we wouldn't otherwise have learned until maybe later. There's another, well, I think I'll end it at that, maybe. Do you have anything?
I think the only thing that I would add is for
A little closer.
seniors typically don't speak up for themselves enough. And I think that's one advice I would give to seniors, that the doctor isn't always 100% right. You don't have to do what they say. If you think there's something wrong, you need to talk to somebody else about it. Maybe most of you are willing to speak up for yourselves more, but most of the seniors that I was familiar with back when I had seniors above me, I'm the senior now, so, but, and I've learned to watch out for myself a little bit better, but I think typically you need to have somebody with you that can see things and look at things and speak up for you if you can't for yourself.
I think the advent of nurse practitioners has really helped the doctors. it has helped them be more, well, the ones I know were involved with the nurse practitioners, so they weren't separated. They didn't work separately. They always confided in each other, and I think that's the way most of them do now. So it kind of changed with the advent of nurse practitioners because, first of all, it took a load off of doctors that they had way too many patients to try to think about and work with. And with a nurse practitioner, it just helped them a lot. So I think they appreciated that, and it made them appreciate nurses better. And I was recently in a local hospital here, and I got a really good feeling from the doctors and the nurses that they work together. So I hope that's the way it is everywhere. I can't say. In that particular hospital, it seemed to be, but, you know. I have one little story from nursing school. I didn't mention the director of nurses. The director of nurses was Sister Virginia. So when we had our 50th, one of the nurses wrote to everyone and said, "Oh, tell us about your career and what you've been doing, and did anybody name their daughter Virginia?" And no was the answer from every single one of them, because Virginia was crazy. She would measure from the floor to the bottom of our skirt to make sure our skirts were long enough, and feel it to make sure it was starched enough. I'm telling you, and I could go on, but I won't. But that's the kind of nursing school. She was very strict. And it showed. We behaved, but, well, there was one time that this president of our class decided we weren't going to go to Marian College that day, and we boycotted the buses. Boy, I mean, Sister Virginia came walking down those halls with her beating on the doors. "You will get on the bus." We were late, but we got on the bus. Anybody else have anything to say? Or any other
Audience.
questions?
Questions? Straight up.
I have a question for Esther. I noticed you were a public health nurse. Did you work primarily for governmental agencies like counties or? Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Bless you for your, well, bless all of you for your service, but thank you so much. Yeah, interesting.
And Esther, following that, did you ever have any real scary situations that you felt in danger?
That would have, in my view, been a completely scary situation in many respects, from what I would hear from the nurses who did work in that level of care. Mine was mild by comparison, just the way. Mm-hmm.
You spoke of the new era with the nurse practitioner. I believe that you people in your era were nurse practitioners because you did a lot of things that they did at that time from experience, and I commend you for it.
Do you agree?
Any comments?
When you were referring to talking about people who are in the hospital as patient, things they should know, I don't know if you've noticed staff more often than not has their name badge turned backwards. Have you noticed how often they do that? No. Don't let them get away with it. Ask everybody who does care, what is your title? What is your job? Because you may pour out all of the things you're concerned about and then find out you're talking to somebody who's just flitting through and will be gone in another hour, who is not a licensed person, but just, an aide, an attendant, or so make sure you're telling your story to the right person.
Anyone else in the audience?
I have a personal question, and I'm not sure who's going to get this, but sometime I may have to call 911. Can you kind of lead me through what happens after I make that call and I arrive at the hospital? I'm kind of clueless.
Well, the ambulance attendants, or what are they called, paramedics, will evaluate you, and they will be in touch with the hospital that the ambulance came from. They'll start an IV. If you're coherent, they'll say, do you want to go to the hospital? If you're not coherent, you go to the hospital. Okay. However, there are other things that happen, but basically that's what will happen. Those guys are in charge, but they're talking to someone at the hospital also, especially if they're not real sure about the situation and why you are not responding or whatever.
And how is it decided what hospital we are taken to? Do we do that, or do they do that?
You can choose, but it's usually one that's fairly close. Oh, okay. Okay.
In this area, Marie, you say? So if you're unconscious and you can't tell them, or someone with you, your wife or spouse or friend is with you and says, no, I want to go to St. John's, they will. But if there's no suggestion in the hospital, they automatically get you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The red thing that we have on our refrigerator.
Yeah. File of life.
It has what hospital do you prefer?
You can stay in a residence, but if they don't know that, you go to Regents.
Did you all hear what Marie said?
No.
That unless you have some kind of a directive or a spouse or someone that says you got to go, you want to go somewhere else, you automatically go to Regions from here.
The paramedics will do that.
The paramedics will take you there.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Other.
And that's a good place to go. I'm not saying you don't want to go there.
I've been in the hospital many times in the last year. A few weeks ago, I had a stroke and brain bleed. I was able to choose, I've always been able to choose what hospital that I go to, but I also have a medical background, so I right away tell them what I want, and I had really good care there.
Did you stick with the same hospital? Okay. Others?
File of life.
Yeah, there's a file of life we're given when we first move in, and we're supposed to fill out the document inside, and in there it has a spot for our hospitals. Correct.
My concern is that that's up in our room on the refrigerator or something, and what's our chances of being there? Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, you have your last chance.
No, I was just going to say, when you call 911, don't start with, I was walking up the stairs, and then I walked down the hall, and then I didn't feel so good. Don't do that. Say, I have chest pain. I'm having trouble breathing. I hit my head. I fell. My hip hurts. Tell them right off in just a few words what the issue is, because there's a good chance the first person you get is not the person who's going to be your actual dispatcher. So that's wasting time going through a whole story only to have to tell the story again. So tell them right off the bat. And of course, when you dial 911, they don't know, is this a medical issue? Is there a fire? Is a car accident? What? They don't know. So be clear right up front.
Good to know. Very good to know. Right. Judy?
That's okay. I just thought we should end it on a light note. A few funny things happened to us throughout nursing. All of us, I'm sure, have had funny things and serious things and horrible things. But in nursing school, we were learning how to make a bed. And somehow my classmate ended up underneath the person that was in the bed. And I still don't know how that happened. And I don't know how she gracefully got out of that one. But anyway, we had fun besides learning a lot of interesting things.
Are there other nurses in the audience? Pardon me? Are there other nurses in the audience?
Are there any other nurses in the audience besides, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. Marie. Nobody else? Oh, yay. Oh, we could have a nurses panel. I mean, a teachers panel. I bet we got a lot of teachers. My daughter included.
How many teachers have we got here in that room? Great.
No. Just us.
Well, we've got what is sort of a panel coming up. Forget whether it's August or what. But we're going to have a discussion about getting scammed. And I had a bad one personally. I still can't believe I was so stupid. So, thank you for coming. We would welcome your ideas with regard to programs. And did you enjoy the panels versus a mix of things? Yes. And to this distinguished board, thank you very, very much. Thanks. Oh, yes. Where's it?
Thank you. I just want one short comment. Was a first grade teacher for 35, 40 years in a public school, and I was a first grade teacher in a public school for 35, 40 years. One of the most important people in that school were the school nurses. They were wonderful people, honest to goodness. It was, they were so appreciated. You know, the secretaries were great, principal was okay, nurses.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, everyone.